Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep today on this concept,
Ooh, exciting.
war as a racket,
Yeah.
and our main source, well, none other than Major General Smedley D. Butler in his pamphlet, War is a Racket.
You know what makes this deep dive especially interesting is that Butler wasn't just some theorist, you know?
Right.
This guy lived and breathed the military, was decorated Marine in U.S. history at the time of his death.
He was there
Yeah.
on the front lines,
Yeah.
Philippines,
Great stuff.
China, Central America,
Yeah.
seeing the realities of war firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
So when he starts calling war a racket, people really sat up and listened.
Yeah, because it really challenges everything we think we know about war.
Right.
It makes you ask the question,
Yeah.
is war always about, patriotism and these noble causes? Or is there something else going on?
Yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah.
What did Butler actually mean by this whole racket idea?
Well, he argued that for a select few, war is a business,
Okay.
a very profitable one. And just like any other racket, there's an inside group pulling the strings and manipulating events
Okay.
to maximize their own gains.
Gotcha. And the scale of this profiteering.
Oh, yeah.
When you look at Butler's examples, it's wild.
It is.
He talks about World War I and the insane profits that companies like DuPont, Bethlehem Steel, and Anaconda Copper were making.
I mean, we're not talking about small percentages here.
No.
DuPont's profits went up by over 950% during the war.
It's insane.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and then you think about the average soldier making like $30 a month at that time.
Yeah,
Oh,
And Butler even gives this anecdote of
right.
millions of pairs of shoes being purchased by the government,
Right.
and mosquito nets that were never even used.
Oh my gosh.
So you see the absurdity and wastefulness of this war profiteering.
Yeah, and this is where his argument gets really powerful because he's saying, sure, there's a financial cost to war, but the real price is paid in human suffering.
Absolutely.
And he does not sugarcoat it.
No.
He describes wounded veterans in government hospitals,
Yeah.
bearing the physical and emotional scars of war.
Yeah, and he doesn't just focus on the soldiers.
Right.
He talks about how families of soldiers carry a heavy burden as well.
Of course.
The emotional toll,
Right.
the financial strain.
Yeah.
War rips through families and communities, leaving these wounds that never really fully heal.
Yeah, and it dismantles this myth
Yeah,
that only those on the front lines are affected by war.
absolutely.
And you think about stories like the bonus march.
Oh, yeah.
These are veterans
Yeah.
who desperately needed their war bonuses early just to get by.
Right.
And they were met with force
Yeah.
just for demanding what they were owed.
It's like a slap in the face, isn't it?
It really is.
After you risk your life for your country,
Yeah.
and then when you need help, you're just abandoned.
It begs the question, if war is so lucrative for some, why are those who fight it often left struggling?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to add up.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About who's benefiting from all of this.
Yeah. It's like this whole system is rigged,
It really is.
where the profits flow upwards and the people who actually fight the wars are left with nothing.
Yeah. And, that brings us to another fascinating aspect of Butler's argument.
Okay.
How fear is used to justify this military spending and interventionism.
Well, he talks about those swivel chair admirals
Oh, yeah.
lobbying for bigger navies and more military exercises, always under the guise of defense purposes only.
And remember, this was written in the 1930s.
Right.
Like way before the military-industrial complex we know today had really taken shape.
Right.
But Butler was already seeing these warning signs.
Makes you wonder,
Yeah.
was he just ahead of his time, or are these patterns just inherent to human nature?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It connects to something else Butler really breaks down.
Okay.
This idea of foreign invasion.
Okay.
He basically uses simple math and logic
Okay.
to show just how improbable a large-scale invasion of the U.S. would be.
Interesting.
He points out you'd need at least 1 million soldiers,
Wow.
tons of equipment, food, fuel,
I mean, just the logistics of it.
Just getting all that across an ocean,
Right.
let alone landing it on hostile shores.
Yeah.
He gets into specifics,
Like what?
like each soldier needing 7 tons of baggage alone.
Oh, my gosh.
And then there's the harbors and the docks.
Yeah.
We wouldn't exactly be rolling out the welcome mat.
Yeah.
He even addresses an aerial invasion.
Oh, yeah.
He points out that planes at the time
Yeah.
simply didn't have the range
Right.
to bomb a city like New York
Right.
from Europe and return safely.
Right.
But even if they did, he had this unshakable faith in American ingenuity.
Right.
He believed that we'd find a way to defend ourselves.
To innovate.
To adapt.
Yeah.
So if an invasion is so unlikely,
why are we constantly bombarded with these warnings about external threats?
That's the heart of his critique, isn't it?
It is.
This idea that it's all part of the racket. Keep the public afraid.
Keep spending more money.
Justify everything.
Exactly.
And speaking of justifying things,
yeah,
he really goes after this hypocrisy.
Oh, yeah.
Of selling arms to other countries.
Oh, he hates that.
He uses this great image.
Oh, yeah.
It's like saying, we're against war, we hate violence.
Right.
But hey, if you want to kill each other,
yeah,
we'll happily sell you the weapons.
Yeah. Just make sure you pay up front.
That's great.
Such a sharp critique of how we try to have it both ways.
Yeah.
The peacemaker and the arms dealer.
Yeah. And it comes from a place of experience.
Absolutely.
This isn't some ivory tower intellectual.
Right.
This is a guy who saw firsthand the devastation that war causes.
So that's why this solution, this amendment for peace that he proposes,
is so fascinating.
It is.
Because he basically says that the power to declare war should rest with the people who would actually be fighting it.
It's radical.
It is.
But it makes you think, right?
Yeah. Who should really have the final say in sending young men and women off to die?
Exactly.
He believed that America is practically invulnerable to invasion.
Yeah.
Thanks to our geography.
It's very hard to invade.
And the sheer logistical challenges.
Yeah.
So his argument is, why are we even risking getting entangled in these conflicts that don't directly threaten us?
Right. He even suggests granting independence to territories like the Philippines and Puerto Rico.
Interesting.
Which he saw as more of a liability than an asset.
Makes sense.
He does make exceptions for places like Hawaii and Alaska.
But even then, his focus is on defense.
Protecting our own borders.
Not on projecting power overseas.
Exactly. Now, it's important to note that Butler didn't see this amendment for peace as some kind of like magic solution.
Right.
He understood that war is complex, that there are deeply rooted economic and political interests involved.
All these things.
He talks about these other efforts to prevent war.
Right.
Neutrality agreement.
Disarmament conference.
Protests.
Right.
He saw value in all of them, but also limitations. Because ultimately, laws can be changed.
Right.
Agreements can be broken.
Right.
And even the most passionate anti-war sentiment can be swept away by a wave of propaganda.
So he believed that this amendment was so crucial. A way to make it much harder for the U.S. to get pulled into these conflicts.
That don't serve our interests.
It's
a really powerful and thought-provoking idea.
It is.
It makes you question the role of the military, how we engage with the world, and ultimately who benefits from war.
And throughout this whole deep dive, I keep coming back to this question. If Butler was so against war, what did he actually see as the path to peace?
That's a great question.
Yeah, what did he propose?
And it's one we'll definitely tackle.
Okay.
Head on in the final part of our deep dive.
So we've seen the dark side of war, the profiteering, the manipulation, the human cost. But what about the flip side? What did Butler actually see as the path to lasting peace?
This is where it gets interesting. Butler wasn't a pacifist.
Okay.
He didn't believe in just laying down arms and hoping for the best. He advocated for strength, but a different kind of strength.
Okay, so what did he mean by that?
Well, he believed in a common sense approach, one that started with a strong national defense, but a defense that was focused solely on protecting American soil. He called it common sense neutrality.
So basically making ourselves less of a target, both militarily and economically.
Exactly. Butler argued that by staying out of foreign entanglements, by refusing to be the world's banker and arms dealer, we could actually contribute to a more peaceful world.
But wouldn't that lead to isolationism, turning our backs on the rest of the world?
He didn't see it that way. He really believed that true peace starts at home. By focusing on creating a just and prosperous society within our own borders, we could set a powerful example for others to follow.
It's kind of like leading by example instead of trying to force our values on others through military intervention.
Precisely. He believed that true strength lies in self-reliance, in focusing on our own problems and finding solutions that work for us. He didn't buy into this idea of American exceptionalism, this notion that we're somehow destined to, police the world.
And I guess that makes sense, given his own experiences. He saw firsthand how American military might was often used for, let's say, less than noble purposes.
Exactly. He believed that true leadership comes from inspiring others, not coercing them. And he felt that America had a lot of work to do at home before we could start lecturing other countries about, democracy and freedom.
So it's not about being passive, but about channeling our energy and resources into building a better society here in America.
That was a big part of his vision. He really believed that by tackling our own challenges, poverty, inequality, injustice, we could become a beacon of hope for the rest of the world.
A beacon that shines through example, not through force.
That's it, exactly. Butler believed in the power of ideas and the power of setting a positive example. He saw war as this, contagious disease, and he felt the best way to avoid infection was to stay as far away from it as possible.
So in a way, he was advocating for a more inward-focused approach to peace building.
Yes, but not in a selfish way. He truly believed that by creating a more just and equitable society here in America, we could have this ripple effect on the rest of the world.
It's a powerful vision. It challenges us to rethink our assumptions about America's role in the world.
And it's a vision that's just as relevant today as it was when Butler wrote War is a Racket almost a century ago.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a lot to ponder. If Butler were alive today, what would he say about the state of the world? Would he be hopeful? Discouraged?
It's hard to say, but I think he'd be pleased to see that his ideas are still being discussed, that people are still grappling with these fundamental questions about war and peace.
He certainly wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo.
Oh, no.
To speak truth to power.
Absolutely.
Even when it was unpopular.
Even when it was dangerous.
And that's a lesson we can all take from him.
Mm-hmm.
To keep asking those tough questions.
Yeah.
To keep challenging assumptions.
Absolutely.
And to never stop striving for a more peaceful and just world.
Well said.
And on that note, we'll wrap things up here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Smedley Butler's War is a Racket. We hope it sparked some new ideas and inspired you to keep exploring these crucial issues. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep diving deep.